Do you do exercises to try to improve your posture? Maybe you feel like you're sitting too much at a desk, you have too much forward head posture, you feel like your spine is rounding, and so you're trying to do specific exercises to get your spine to straighten, to help pull your head back, to help pull your shoulders back. On this week's episode of the Exercises Health Podcast, we're going to identify the three biggest mistakes that we see being made when people do these types of exercises. We're going to cue our introduction and we're going to dive right into this conversation. Hey, welcome back, exercisers, to the Exercise is Health podcast, brought to you by Exercise for Life Studios, where we believe that your health is your most valuable asset, and the single best thing that you can do to both boost and protect this asset is exercise. Specifically, exercise is geared towards building the health and function of your muscles. We are your hosts, Charlie
and Julie,
and this week we are exploring this idea of postural exercise. So often, especially within the more kind of corrective branches of the fitness industry, this idea of doing exercise to improve your posture is a really hot topic. But there are some huge mistakes we see being made when people try to do these exercises that actually are preventing them from getting the types of results that they're wanting. So we're going to discuss this more in depth today, but before we do, we want to let you know about something amazing that's starting this weekend.
That's right, Charlie. This Sunday, which is April 28th, we are kicking off the final One Workout Away challenge of the season. We're calling it Pumped and Powerful. If you are unaware of our One Workout Away challenges, these are accountability groups that we run from a private Facebook group, so you can log on, see all the workouts, see all the content, and we're going to be running it for 28 days straight. It's going to be all about applying the Exercise for Life principles. So if you've been listening to our podcast and you're like, yo, this makes sense, I want to jump in, but I need some guidance, this is a great way to get started. We're going to be using the principles so that you are safe, effective, and that you're honestly building your strength in a way you've never done before. And don't worry, we show very advanced versions, we show very modified versions. I will be doing it 8 months pregnant, so there will definitely be some modified versions. But we like to show you this because it's all about matching exercises to your body. That's going to be the best way to build your health, all while using our 4 Exercise for Life principles. So we want to see you there. Make sure you sign up before Sunday, April 28th, and you go to www.exerciseforlifestudios.com/OWA, and it's an easy sign-up page there, and we can't wait to get it started.
So, Julie, I have a question to kick off this episode.
Okay.
Ready. So, in your training career, all right, would you say that the idea of somebody wanting better posture has been a popular concept or something that you just hear about every once in a while?
Like all the time. Super popular.
Oh my God. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. A lot of people are really into this idea of like, hey, I need to have better posture. In fact, I've never met anybody who says, I need to have worse posture. Gosh, I wish my posture wasn't as good. And so maybe they may not be verbalizing the need or intent or desire to have better posture, but they are certainly in no way, shape, or form advocating that they would like the opposite, that they would like to have worse posture. And so when it comes to exercise, there are a lot of exercises out there that are deemed postural exercises. Hey, you do these exercises, they will work your quote unquote postural muscles, and then you will have better posture because of it, okay? We see it a lot, again, in the kind of corrective exercise space. You see it sometimes in physical therapy or chiropractic, professions that are very focused on posture and having good posture and everything like that. The problem is there are some big issues that we see happening when people try to do these exercises, either under the guidance of somebody else or on their own or watching videos or whatever it is. And these mistakes that we see happening, they're not just mistakes as like, oh yeah, it's going to feel a little bit weird when you do the exercise. They will actually prohibit you from getting the intended results, which may be why a lot of people get so frustrated with this idea of trying to improve their posture with their exercise, because how they're going about doing it actually is not conducive to them getting better posture because of the exercise.
You know what, Charlie, as you're saying that, I was thinking, you're totally right. Posture is kind of like diet, like what you're eating, where people, it's very uncommon when people are like, actually I have the perfect diet. You know, the best that we kind of get with diet is like, hey, I feel comfortable with the stuff I'm eating and I feel good with it. You know, I'm not getting like regular stomach aches and I feel strong, I feel energized. Like that is kind of the ideal, and we know it's something that needs to be actively maintained all the time. Just like posture, there is no place where well, I don't want to say no, but it's very uncommon when you meet someone like, yes, I have perfect posture. I go about my day, and every time I sit or stand or get in my car or play with my kids, I have perfect posture. No, it's something that needs to be managed. And the reason why diet needs to be managed is because we eat 3 to 5 to 7 to a million times a day. We have to constantly be managing what's going in our body. Same with posture. Our posture is managed by our muscles. And we know the way that muscles stay healthy is to be getting the right type of stimulus. That's through exercise, that's through the movement patterns you're doing or the movements that you regularly do through the day. It depends on the intensity of the challenge, just like with diet. Like if you ate 1 grape versus 10 grapes, they're still both grapes, but the intensity or the amount. So what we hope to get for you today, leaving this podcast after you listen, is thinking, okay, I feel really comfortable with how to manage my posture. Because again, there's never a point, where you're like, it's perfect now. I feel amazing. It's perfect. No, because it's managed by muscles. Muscles are this active, changing tissue. So the goal is to always be feeding your muscles of your posture the right type of food or nutrients or stimulus is what we would call it when it's in the exercise world.
So one of the most common things within postural exercise programs is the idea of doing some type of core exercises or exercises for your trunk muscles, your abs, your obliques, and your back extensors and things like that. And clearly, like having strong and well-functioning core muscles is going to be a big part of how your posture is, because those are the muscles that are going to control the position of your spine. And so if they're weak, if they're not functioning well, guess what? Like you're not going to be able to position your spine all that well. The mistake that we see happening a lot when people are doing like postural exercises and specifically core exercises for their posture is when it comes to doing the back extension exercises, they're not really focused on trying to get those muscles stronger, not in the same way that they are trying to strengthen the other muscles of their body, such as their legs or their abdominals or their shoulder muscles or things like that. Exercises where or muscles where they're using quite a bit of load or a lot more load than what they're using for their back extension exercises. So a lot of times when it comes to like, oh, I'm going to do some exercises for back extension, they might be face down on the ground doing like a cobra exercise where they're, lifting up through their low back muscles, their spinal erectors to try to straighten or extend up off the ground. Or maybe they're on an angled bench and they are, trying to extend from there. And clearly the mass of their body has some type of load that they are fighting against. But rarely do people really think about trying to load these muscles and load these exercises the way they do other muscles of their body. And so because of that, there is a huge opportunity to actually get these muscles stronger that is not being taken advantage of because they are not using the type of load that they would when they try to challenge other muscles of their body.
Charlie, you brought up an amazing point here where it's like we have these muscles of our posture, and the thing for some reason when it comes to posture is that our brains go straight to like positional. Like if you sit up tall, like if you're sitting in a posture seminar, everyone starts like, someone says posture and everyone sits up tall. And that's like, I want to be in a position, right? Or we think, oh, I need to work on extending my spine, which is like that C shape on the back of your spine when you're doing like a cobra type movement or you're arching back. It's positional. But we always have to remember that muscles respond to force. And so one of the biggest things, hands down, that I see, especially with my clients, and most of them are 50 and over, is like they feel like, well, my posture is not good, so let's practice the positions first. And then, I don't know, maybe we'll incorporate in some kind of workout. But what we find so much is that without adding challenge to these exercises, you're going to get some change, but not as much change as you're going to see if you start adding challenge or load or weight, however you want to describe that extra force on your body. Because one of the big fuels for muscles is to be squeezing and contracting. And the way you do that is when it's being forced against by an external load, like at the gym. So when you're doing your spinal extension exercises or your back arching exercises or your standing up tall exercises, those muscles that control the back side of your back, your back muscles, your posture muscles, they need to be challenged by weight. They can't just be, hey, I can get to the position and check the box. So what we do want to see is that you have load on them. So maybe something like when you are holding dumbbells, or there are different various machines at a gym that will challenge the tissue. And it's incredible how much change I see all the time with my clients where they're like, I don't know, should we really be doing this? My posture's already bad. But we're conditioning the muscles, and that helps to control posture. It's actually the number one controller of posture because it's active tissue. So don't be scared of challenge. Of course, follow the 4 exercise for life principles. We're not saying challenge your body so you get injured. We're saying challenge your body so that it launches you in the direction of health and strength and resiliency that you're wanting in your life. But that's going to require not just attaining positions. It's going to require you being challenged with force, external force, in those positions.
The other interesting thing about the spinal erector muscles is they have a unique advantage when it comes to your posture, just based on the other tissues that are around them, specifically something called the thoracolumbar fascia. And what's interesting about this is actually the bigger your spinal erectors get, so the more you build those muscles, like the actual tissue itself gets bigger, not just stronger, but actually bigger, the more pressure it puts on that thoracolumbar fascia, which then puts more tension into the spine to help you maintain your posture. So simply by building bigger, like lower back muscles and spinal erector muscles, it will be easier for you to maintain more of an upright, less slouched posture throughout your day without your muscles having to work nearly as hard as they may when your muscles are not as big along the backside of your spine. So that's kind of a unique anatomical aspect of the muscles that actually doesn't have to do with the muscles themselves, but rather the surrounding tissue. But by working the muscles, yes, getting them stronger, but actually getting them to build bigger, which we call hypertrophy, like building bigger lower back muscles, you'll have a better ability to maintain a more upright, more erect posture easier. The second big mistake that we see with posture exercises has to do with the shoulders. And a lot of times people do exercises such as like face pulls, or maybe they're doing like Ys, like you do the YMCA, but just the Y exercise, okay? And trying to more or less get their shoulder blades pulled back. Like there's a concern about rounded shoulders. A lot of people are sitting at their desks, working on their computer, shoulders coming forward. And so exercises designed to kind of pull the shoulder blades back have been a big emphasis of these more posturally focused programs. The thing about it is, though, is when a lot of people do these exercises, they're actually not focusing on their shoulder blade. They're not focusing. Yeah, right. They're actually not focusing on their shoulder blades. They're focusing more on the shoulder muscles that they see, such as their deltoid. So they're more outer shoulder muscles, and they are trying to feel the exercise where they think of when it comes to their shoulders, which is again on more of kind of the outside part of their body, versus trying to feel the exercise through the muscles that control the shoulder blades, which in this case, the ones that pull the shoulders back are going to be more closer to the spine. They're going to be more along the upper back area, and even into like the middle upper back area. And so trying to feel the exercise there, feel the shoulder blades moving, as opposed to focusing on the arms and the shoulders moving.
You're right, Charlie. When we think about having poor posture, kind of what comes to mind for most people is like a slouchy back and then slouchy shoulders, right? Like that's the next step. And it's so true. So many of the shoulder blade muscles actually are postural muscles because they do connect to the shoulder blade, and then they connect right into the spine, all the way from your mid back down to your low spine. And a few of them even go right into your sacrum, which is like the top of your hip bone. So it's like your whole back almost is controlled in some way with muscles that connect from the shoulder blade into the spine or somewhere in your core. Now, what we do see all the time, like you're saying, Charlie, is that there's a focus on the shoulder muscles. So that's like your glenohumeral joint. So that's like your, almost like the ball and socket joint of your shoulder. But what we really want to be focusing on is what the shoulder blade is doing. And the reason this gets kind of confusing for most people that haven't listened to this amazing podcast is that When we think of exercise, a lot of us think about grand, large motions. We think about the motions we can see, like a big, giant jumping jack or a big arm pull. We think, oh, that's working our arms. But there are very intricate motions that happen, and one of the ones that generally hides from us, only because it doesn't have like a limb that sticks out of our body, like an arm or a leg or your head, is the shoulder blade. The shoulder blade glides almost on your rib cage. So if you think about like the back of your back, it's made up of a rib cage, and then there's a shoulder blade that like lays on top. And all shoulder blade motions are going to happen almost like they're sliding under your skin almost. So we don't see a limb moving, which is why it's so confusing. So you want to be including shoulder blade exercises so that you're able to really feel and control and build the conditioning and strength of those shoulder blades, because again, a huge part of posture is that slouchy spine, but then the second part that we see is those slouchy shoulders. And now you might have slouchy shoulders, but a lot of times people's shoulders are slouchy due to lack of conditioning and strength in their shoulders. They didn't realize, oh, when I do my upper body exercises, I should really be squeezing through my blades also.
Absolutely. Now, the third big mistake that we see people making when they're doing their postural exercises is they don't even know if the muscles that they're trying to work are working or contracting well to begin with. All right, and that really is where muscle activation techniques comes into play, okay? When you do an exercise, your body is always going to default to the muscles that is easiest for it to access and easiest for it to use. But that may be different than the muscles that you are actually trying to work when you do an exercise. And the problem lies where you do an exercise, you're trying to target certain muscles. Maybe you're trying to target the muscles of your upper back and the ones that control your shoulder blades. But if those muscles aren't working well, your body is going to automatically start using other muscles to try to help you do the exercise. And it does not matter how much you do that exercise. If the muscles that you're trying to target aren't working well, they're not going to be used. And what ends up happening is you start to create greater and greater compensations within your body when you are trying to almost in some ways get rid of those compensations by doing the exercise. You're actually furthering the compensations because the muscles that you're trying to use aren't working well to begin with.
That's right. Like a really quick lingo thing that we like to say and that we gain from our muscle activation techniques training is that the strong ones get stronger and the weak ones generally stay weak when you do exercises, whether they're labeled as like workout exercises or conditioning exercises. Because again, if there are muscles that are really difficult for your nervous system to access, then you're not going to access them when you're exercising. That's like the most vulnerable time because it's being targeted, it's being directly challenged, and your body's like, holy moly, don't use those weak guys because we don't know what's going to happen. So what we do with muscle activation techniques is the process specifically identifies these weak ones or the ones that are hard to access, and we bring them back on board. So then you have like a full slate of muscles when you're trying to practice your spinal extension or your trunk side bending, whatever you're doing to improve your core or postural muscles. What we find a lot of times is that because you don't exercise at all, or you've been doing a whole bunch of core exercises, but you still feel like your posture is struggling, it's probably not the exercise selection. Meaning it's probably not the case where you just haven't found the magical exercise that fixes it all, because you're probably doing a lot of stuff to improve your posture. And if you still feel like something is not lining up, you're probably doing all the right things you can do by yourself. You just need a tune-up with MAT to make sure that all your muscles are neurologically connected and making sure that your body is able to access these muscles. And once you do that, you can go back to your regular exercises and you'll notice, oh my gosh, I'm actually feeling contractions here. I'm actually feeling like I can strengthen these more. And your exercise actually becomes so much more efficient. And that's why it's like in my opinion, like the number one cherry on top add-on to whatever you're doing rehab related or exercise related to work on your posture.
So if you are doing exercise to try to improve your posture, but you feel like it's not progressing the way you would hope, make sure these three things are in place. Number one, make sure that you are adding sufficient amount of load when you're doing your core exercises and especially your spinal extension exercises. Number two, make sure that when you do your shoulder exercises, you are actually focused on trying to strengthen the muscles that control your shoulder blades. Get those shoulder blades moving, not just your arms. And number three, add in muscle activation techniques to make sure that the muscles that you are trying to target with your exercise, the muscles you are trying to use with your exercise, are actually viable options for your body to use during those exercises. You're not just furthering compensation patterns by doing your postural exercises. So who do you know that needs to hear this episode? Who do you know that has been trying to improve their posture by doing postural exercises but is not getting the results that they're wanting? Share this episode with them so they can learn about 3 big mistakes they may be making and how to course correct them. And while you're online, head on over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to us and leave us a rating and review. It helps people find our podcast when they're looking for information on exercise and they're looking for information on health. So if you found value in this conversation today, let us know by leaving us a 5-star rating and review. If you're in the Chicagoland area and would like to get your body assessed with MAT, you can check us out online by going to matschaumburg.com. You can click the big green button that says Get Started and you can book your initial consultation and MAT assessment with us right from there. Well, thanks so much for tuning in. We always appreciate it. Have a fantastic week, and we'll talk with you all next week.
This podcast is for information purposes only. The statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Julie and Charlie Gates, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements or advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical issue, consult a licensed physician.